turf from change.
The instant of death for 47 crewmen of the battleship Iowa. First dramatic video tonight of a 16-inch gun turret exploding at sea last Wednesday. This is the CBS Evening News. Connie Chung reporting. Good evening. The battleship Iowa is back home tonight after that fiery explosion killed 47 of its sailors. Tonight, the first video pictures of the actual explosion on board the USS Iowa. They were taken at the moment of the fiery blast in gun turret number 2. It was during live gunfire exercises in open ocean northeast of Puerto Rico. The seamen in the upper chambers of the gun turret reportedly died instantly, and those in the lower levels apparently suffocated as the explosion siphoned off their oxygen. Tonight, an emotional homecoming for the lucky men who escaped death or injury in one of the worst naval tragedies in years. CBS News correspondent Terrence Smith is in Norfolk, Virginia now with the arrival. Terry?
Connie, we've just seen an extraordinary, even chilling sight here as this huge ship came into dock. The entire 1,600-man crew lined up at the rails, dressed in white, each man wearing a black armband, the flag at half-mast. Very silent, out of respect for the 47 dead crewmen. And then, as they dropped the lines ashore, a huge cheer went up from the families on the pier behind me. The excitement began to build late this afternoon as the huge ship made its way up the Elizabeth River into Norfolk Harbor. For the crew members' families, it was a moment of joy, tinged with relief.
We're just all a little anxious. It'll be nice to finally see my brother and say welcome home, give him a hug. That'll be nice.
But for the family of Hal Romine, a 19-year-old from Bradenton, Florida, who died in the accident, it was the worst of moments. His brother Michael is a Marine corporal.
I knew he was one of them. I had a gut feeling.
Yeah, and he couldn't wait to come home, and he missed everyone. And
Hal's mother said her son had a premonition of trouble to come.
He said he was concerned that the jobs were so tedious that one mistake could kill someone. There's not enough patriotism in this country today. We don't realize how much it takes to keep this country free. And I feel that Hal did the best that he could do. He gave his life for this country.
Connie, the crew members are just now beginning to come off the Iowa. This homecoming very different from the ordinary scene here. As a rule, there would be bands, balloons, a great celebration. While there's relief, there's no celebration. It's a muted homecoming for the Iowa. Connie?
Thank you, Terrence Smith. We'll be back with you later on our broadcast. Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney said today that despite the Iowa accident, the U.S. will not retire its battleships. And in a surprise move, Cheney also said he's recommending big cuts in 2 leading Reagan administration projects, the stealth bomber and Star Wars. More from White House correspondent Jacqueline Adams.
2 days before he unveils his plan to Congress, Defense Secretary Dick Cheney was remarkably candid about how he'll slice $10 billion from Washington's most jealously guarded political pie.
The former Wyoming congressman confessed that admirals, generals, and associates on Capitol Hill all turned up the heat.
Everybody in town got together and said, "That's great, Dick. I hope you can make the budget, but don't close my base, don't cut my weapons system, don't slow down production on my products."
In the end, though, Cheney's decided to cut everything, including President Reagan's SDI or Star Wars missile defense system.
Instead of spending $40 billion over the next 5 years on SDI, we'll spend about $33 billion.
Likewise, Cheney admitted money played a major role in President Bush's MX missile decision. $5.4 billion to deploy it on rail cars versus $25 billion for the smaller, as yet untested, mobile Midget Man missile.
We'll do rail garrison first, put a little bit of money in the budget next year for the small ICBM, and then as we get the rail garrison deployed, we'll start to ramp up on the small ICBM.
The Pentagon chief said he's cutting 1 carrier group from the Navy, 8,000 men from the Army, and
the possibility exists that we may see over the next few years circumstances in which it'll be possible to reduce the total level of U.S. commitment in Europe. It's a possibility, but it has to be done cautiously and carefully.
The reason? An about-face on Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev.
I have been a real skeptic about Mr. Gorbachev, but I am increasingly persuaded that he's real in terms of his determination to make changes inside the Soviet Union.
Washington insiders chalk up Cheney's candor to his newness on the job. Congressmen love to talk, said one. He hasn't made the switch yet to Secretary of Defense. Jacqueline Adams, CBS News, Washington.
The Oliver North jury took a break from deliberations today. North himself spent part of the day in church with his wife and children. The jurors deciding the 12 felony counts against him in the Iran-Contra affair return to court tomorrow. The U.S. Supreme Court again takes up the abortion issue this week. Today there was a fundraiser in Los Angeles by a group fighting to keep abortion legal. Attending was Norma McCorvey, the so-called Jane Roe of the landmark Roe v. Wade decision that legalized abortion. Coming up next on the CBS Evening News, demands for democracy in communist China. And later on Inside Sunday, developers who don't see the forest for the trees, but for the land underneath.
April in Paris.
He said he'd give me Paris wrapped up in ribbons. But he was young and poor. So we settled for a small cafe and coffee. Coffee so rich, I thought I'd never taste its like again.
Discover the pleasure of rich French roast. New from Maxwell House. Rich French roast coffee. We can't give you France, but we'll give you the flavor.
We're here at the new Disney MGM Studios theme park for the premiere of the 1990 Chevy Lumina. The Lumina sedan has the most passenger room in its class. And coming later this year, the Lumina Coupe and the new Lumina all-purpose vehicle with optional seating for 7, no matter what your size. Introducing the family Lumina from today's Chevrolet.
The heartbeat of America. That's today's Chevrolet.
Chevy Lumina, official car of the Disney MGM Studios theme park. See you real soon.
The Remington Electroblade vibrating blade system. With high-speed motor and vibrating twin blades, glides so easily for incredibly close, smooth, comfortable shaves. Or your money back. Remington Electroblade.
Good friends and good food, but my stomach aches. My party and my Lanta 2.
Double strength Mylanta 2 with nearly double the acid neutralizing power of any leading regular strength brand.
Because my life takes my Lanta 2.
Rioters in China stormed government buildings in 2 provincial capitals overnight. Army reinforcements reportedly were sent today to Beijing, where students planned new, more widespread protests. John Cheyenne reports.
The week-long pro-democracy demonstrations have spread from Beijing to several other Chinese cities. And in at least 2 provinces, the protests turned violent. Dozens of police and civilians were reportedly injured. These heavily edited pictures, broadcast on state-run Chinese TV, showed nothing of student demands for democratic rights, but did show a man deliberately setting fire to a truck. In both Xi'an and Changsha, shops were looted and vehicles destroyed. Officials acknowledged that the rampaging mobs were led by common hoodlums and not by students. But violence in the streets touches a sensitive nerve in conservative China, even among intellectuals who support the students' demands for free speech and freedom of the press.
People like us, if in the chaos, then only the hooligans will be benefited. And all people, all the intellectuals, and including the students and intellectuals, and also including all the officials, will fail.
The past week of peaceful demonstrations has not been reported in China's newspapers or on the air.
So what's the use of try to pretend nothing had happened in Beijing? It's even in a very in this sense, it's useless.
Despite the heavy-handed government censorship, news of the expanding protests circulates by word of mouth.
The students want the democracy, want more freedom, more freedom of speech, and something good, something positive from the demonstration, not just demonstration for itself.
On the campuses, student activists are planning their next steps, possibly more demonstrations, possibly a strike. But further action could backfire, forcing reformers in the government onto the defensive and resulting in even more severe repression. John Cheyenne, CBS News, Beijing.
There was a major outbreak of violence today in the occupied Gaza Strip. Israeli soldiers shot and wounded a reported 53 Palestinian demonstrators in a dozen separate incidents. Most of the victims reportedly were children or teenagers. Protesters in Moscow found out today that even the glasnost government of Mikhail Gorbachev won't tolerate every demonstration. Jonathan Sanders reports.
In Moscow today, a sprawling demonstration begun to protest the bloodshed in Georgia 2 weeks ago turned into a series of confrontations between police and protesters. At least 47 people were arrested. Called by the Democratic Union, a self-proclaimed alternative party, the rally had no central focus. There was a very heavy police presence. Special Black Parade riot units rammed through crowds to arrest demonstrators waving the flags of Free Russia. As police dragged off demonstrators to waiting buses, the crowd shouted fascist, Gestapo, and shame at the authorities. It all seemed like a giant effort at crowd control. Protesters had been warned that today's rally would be broken up. But that seemed to bring out more people, now that Soviet citizens feel they have a right to make their voices heard. Jonathan Sanders, CBS News, Moscow.
Government radio in Afghanistan says at least 12 people were killed today when rockets fired by Muslim rebels hit Kabul. It was the third rocket attack in 4 days on the Afghan capital.
Oh boy, new fruit and fiber. What? Well, they just added 25% more dates, raisins, and walnuts to the dates, raisins, and walnuts. Actually, it's so delicious, they ought to call it fruit. Hey, morning.
New Post Fruit and Fiber cereal, now with 25% more dates, raisins, and walnuts.
Pain that throbs, aches, pain that pulses. Remember, there is a wonder drug for pain like this. The wonder drug doctors themselves take more often for pain. The wonder drug doctors take more than extra strength Tylenol, more than Advil. More doctors take Bayer for pain. Bayer is the wonder drug that works wonders.
You're on your way.
The company that gave me a summer job in Louisiana last year has sent me to Germany this year. And we've got an interesting challenge, getting a special product to people who need it all over the world. It's used in formulating medical compounds that fight heart disease, high blood pressure, and more. Hard to imagine a college senior working on a project like this. But I found one company willing to give a young person a chance.
Down lets you do great things.
Gas pain, bloating. Gas-X has the strongest, fastest relief ingredient. Painful gas is like beer bubbles. Add the leading acid. Add Gas-X. Only Gas-X gets rid of the gas. The strongest, fastest reliever for gas pain and bloating. Gas-X.
Alaskans today mark the 30-day anniversary of the Exxon oil spill by observing 5 minutes of silence. They did the same in Indianapolis on what the mayor proclaimed Prince William Sound Day. A service was held to remember the lost wildlife and to protest the damage to the environment. What man is doing to the earth and its natural resources is our topic tonight on Inside Sunday. We look at how our air, water, and land are used and abused. We begin in the West, where water is in short supply. Demand is growing, and cities are looking for it down on the farm. That has led to a tug of water. Rick Saylor's farm has what Arizona cities want: water. And to get it, they're snapping up his neighbor's land, not for the crops above, but for the water below. That set off a bitter water battle across the state, as small towns wonder what will happen to them once their water is gone.
They conceivably can suck some of this farmland, some of the lands out in the rural areas dry.
They don't understand if they buy all the land in the county and take all the water that there won't be any development.
But booming cities say explosive growth leaves them no choice. And they point out that in the arid West, agriculture uses 80% of the water.
When you're out in this area, you're going to have to find ways to move water to the people. And that means you're going to have to buy it from the folks that have it.
With that philosophy, cities have been going after water rights with a vengeance. In Arizona's La Paz County, 100 miles west of Phoenix, cities and developers have bought almost half the privately held land in the past 2.5 years. Phoenix alone has 14,000 acres of farmland here, and it wants more.
It's no secret to anybody that we are looking. It's also no secret to people that are interested in selling. We have them coming in here all the time.
Anger and frustration have spilled over into the state legislature, where farmers hope they can at least slow the water rights raid.
The larger communities have to have a sufficient amount of water for a reasonable growth, but I want to make sure that in that process that the rural parts of Arizona are not killed.
But it may be an uphill battle, because buying already developed water, cheaper and environmentally less destructive than building dams, is sweeping the West. Colorado started so-called water marketing 20 years ago. Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, and Arizona now allow it as well.
I think we'll be seeing it all over the West and eventually all over the United States. There's a limited resource and there are too many demands on it.
But predictions like that make Rick Saylor wonder if he'll be the last generation to till barley in the desert fields of Arizona.
If the issue is not solved, the people that will pay will be our children and our grandchildren.
To put Western water problems in some kind of perspective, consider this. Chicago gets 40 inches of rain and snow a year. In Phoenix, yearly rainfall is only 8 inches. In a moment, the future of forests. Inside Sunday continues on the CBS Evening News.
Susan, can we talk?
Sure, Dad.
You notice anything different about Mom?
She's acting pretty wild for her age.
Well, I don't just mean the roller skates.
And the motor scooter. She even borrowed my new dress. Come on, Dad, what is it?
A balanced diet with the right vitamin nutrition helps people get more out of life. Some are finding Kellogg's Product 19. 100% of 12 vitamins and minerals. Feel good about yourself.
Not the, rubber dress.
Feel like 19 again.
With it, you can communicate instantly with anyone virtually anywhere in the world. With it, you can save time and money. Without it, you're just not dressed for business. The MCI card. It is America's business card.
What a relief. The doctor said no surgery for my hemorrhoids.
That's great.
Yeah, they're not that serious. He said use Preparation H.
You can often relieve pain and itch for hours and help shrink swelling of inflamed hemorrhoidal tissues with Preparation H. Also a new cream.
Good friends and good food, but my stomach aches. My party and my Lanta too.
Phone calls, deadlines, stomach complaints, my job, and my Lanta too.
Circles and turns while my stomach burns. My trip, my Lanta too.
Double strength My Lanta 2 with nearly double the acid neutralizing power of any leading regular strength brand. The strength it takes to get on with your life.
And my life takes my Lanta too.
Forest lands in this country are in growing danger, and it's a matter of economics. Lumber companies are finding the land is worth more than the trees. Scott Pelley reports on the effort by some states to save the trees.
I think it's under the worst threat now that it's ever been.
Clarence Petty fears for his home, New York's Adirondack Forest. After 84 years, he sees this land of lake and timber yielding to the pressures of profit.
They are interested only in one thing, and that's making money.
In the forests of the Northeast, there is a rush to build. Land once pristine is being cleared for second homes. The boom has been triggered by timber companies that find their land is now worth more for lodging than logging. Hundreds of square miles are being sold to developers, alarming conservationists and state governments.
We would prefer to keep those lands wilderness, preserved for recreational purposes, for all people, for all time in the state.
In New York, the land sales reached the level of state emergency last fall. Here in the Adirondack Park, a timber company sold a vast parcel, 100,000 acres, to a developer. The state rushed to reclaim the land and paid the developer $11 million to preserve the wilderness. But even at that price, the state was able to buy only half the property.
I think it certainly is a crisis, every bit as great as the crisis of acid rain.
Ecologist Michael D'Annunzio fears states can save only a fraction of the wilderness.
Unfortunately, 60% of the Adirondack Park is privately owned. That means millions of acres of open space lands are at stake.
Timber companies insist the fears are exaggerated. They believe balance can be found.
developers, the industry, everyone as a whole is focusing on the sensitivities of the environment, focusing on ways and plans to control development, allow development to exist, but control it.
But a worried governor of New York is concerned simply controlling development isn't enough.
By saying this state knows its obligation to generations it will never see. It is ultimately a moral act you perform when you preserve the environment. You're not doing it for yourself.
None of us really own this land, you know. We're just temporarily occupying it. Anybody thinks that they own it forever, would better think again, because we don't.
The neighboring states of New England are also beginning to repurchase land from the timber companies, but their treasuries can afford to save only the most fragile areas. Logging companies are expected to sell much more, leaving hundreds of miles for developers to stake a claim on land once untamed. Scott Pelley, CBS News, Adirondack Park, New York.
Southern California is making a big push to once and for all clean up the air with a series of tough new pollution control rules. But as David Dow reports, while the air may be free, keeping it clean is a costly proposition.
Lars Fraser knows the nation's dirtiest air intimately.
I feel it when I'm biking, my chest becomes very constricted, I have shortness of breath. On a very bad day, I actually become quite ill.
Fraser pedals 15 miles to work instead of driving as his own personal sacrifice in the war on smog, in a region where breathing can be bad for you about half the time.
The first stage smog alert was called at 3 o'clock this afternoon for the Burbank area. Air is considered very unhealthful there now.
But even Fraser could face more sacrifices in a proposed sweeping assault on air pollution that could affect the lifestyles of all 12 million residents of the Los Angeles area. He would pay more to license his second car, confront stiff parking fees almost everywhere, even shopping centers, and one day join traffic powered by electricity or methane, the only kind allowed. Fraser is ready.
It's getting to the point where eventually it will be too late, so we have to do something now. It's obvious.
But not so obvious to others.
Charging for parking seems like it's just going to make people angry.
I think it's outrageous, horrendous, and I won't pay.
Some predict the reaction will go far beyond parking protests.
My expectation is that many people will make changes in their lifestyle, and they'll involve moving away.
And the changes wouldn't be limited to lifestyle. Tough new rules would affect manufacturers such as this furniture factory. New non-polluting paints would be required. So would new ways to apply them. As some see it, an industrial revolution the industry can't afford.
If our costs are pushed out of line by obeying the local regulations, then we won't be competitive.
Cost estimates of the 20-year cleanup plan range from $200 to $2,000 per year per household. But what of the costs of smog itself?
I think it will cost less to clean up the air than to not clean up the air. If you look at all of the medical costs and all of the crop damage costs, there are tremendous costs to doing nothing.
Federal officials will have the last word on the pollution plan, but it will be up to Lars Fraser and his neighbors to decide whether the costs of clean air are too high. David Dow, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Polls show that concern for the earth is growing. In 1977, only about a quarter of Americans felt tougher environmental protection laws were needed. By last year, more than half felt that way. Next month, President Bush is expected to send Congress his proposals for toughening up the Clean Air Act. We'll be back with more. Terrence Smith live in Norfolk, Virginia with the USS Iowa.
The old gray Subaru ain't what she used to be. Introducing the larger, more powerful Subaru Legacy.
You know this stuff's been around for 90 years?
It's still crunchy.
It started with an honest, nutty taste.
And they stayed with it, right?
Yep, that's integrity.
But once in a while, they ought to put a decoder ring in here.
Post Grape Nut Cereal, the one and only.
I feel good.
If you want to control your sodium, cholesterol, and fat intake, delicious Le Menu Lifestyle lets you feel
So good.
Excuse me, ever try this coffee?
Oh, no. I use special gourmet beans.
So do we.
Ah, I roast them to perfection.
So do we.
I brew fresh, rich coffee.
So do we, but then we freeze dry it to lock in superior fresh brewed flavor and aroma until you release it.
Perfect. Who are you?
We're the only ones who do all this. We're Taster's Choice, the choice for taste.
As we reported earlier, the battleship Iowa is safely docked tonight at the Norfolk Naval Station, its home port. Back now to correspondent Terrence Smith at dockside. Terry, so many of us have seen these types of homecomings before, but this one is entirely different, isn't it?
It really is, Connie, and what happened here was really something extraordinary. A very somber arrival suddenly turned into an exuberant homecoming at the moment that the Navy authorities opened the gate behind me at the end of the pier. The families flooded down the pier and up the gangplanks onto the ship to greet their sailors there and to be with them in a reunion that's still going on. The ship has turned into a sort of giant house party as the families still crowd onto the ship and meet their sailors. You can also see, I believe, from this position, the 3 barrels of turret 2, which are twisted to the side, as you can see, sticking out the starboard side of the ship. They are frozen, I am told, in position after the explosion. They cannot move that turret, and so they had to return with it in that position rather than straight ahead as they would normally be. But at the moment, an extraordinary reunion on board the USS Iowa.
Of us want to honor the privacy of these people. Have you been able to talk to any of them, though, or are you too far away?
No, we've been kept down at this end of the pier, Connie, and not able to talk to the people, although the families, other than the families we spoke to before the arrival. But they are gathering here and will be here tonight, and so will the families of the 47 dead crew members who are gathering for a memorial service tomorrow, scheduled at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, where President Bush will be among those officiating at a service to honor the 47 who lost their lives in this explosion. But a simply extraordinary scene, as you can see behind me, I think. The families crowding on. Some have dressed up for the occasion. Some almost deliberately have dressed down. They've got signs welcoming their sailors home, balloons, that sort of thing. So after that first silent, very somber arrival, I think you can hear the cheers behind me. It has changed into a much more exuberant and affectionate homecoming. Connie?
Terry, I'm sure many parents and other relatives of the survivors are watching for the first time on television their relatives arriving and trying to catch a little glimpse of a face here and there. Terry, finally, once again, the memorial service is tomorrow. You mentioned President Bush attending?
That's correct. At 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, a memorial service here at the Norfolk Naval Base. And now, as you can see behind me, the first sailors with their families are starting to come off the USS Iowa at the end of a abbreviated and very unfortunate tour of duty. Connie?
Thank you, Terrence Smith. The sailors are all wearing black armbands. CBS News will carry the memorial service for the Iowa 47 tomorrow morning, beginning at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. And that's our news. Dan Rather will be here tomorrow, and later tonight, Bill Plant with the CBS Sunday Night News. I'm Connie Chung in New York. I'll see you again next Sunday night. Thank you for joining us, and for all of us at CBS News, good night.
This is CBS.